It is 10:03 a.m. and I'd like to call the August 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Bylaw Review Subcommittee of the Town Council to order. This meeting is being recorded by LCAT and in accordance with Mass General Law. I need to ask if anyone else is recording this meeting and to identify themselves by raising their hand to be recognized. Do you see anyone, Jeannie?
Nope, but I just added Tom in.
Okay, I see Tom.
Hey, there he
Hello,
is.
Tom.
Hey there. Hey, Tom.
This meeting is being held virtually on Zoom in accordance with Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for everything you do, especially you, Ralph.
Yeah.
'Cause I know
Always fun.
you've been working hard on this. The first item is to adopt or approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of August 4th.
I'll
I will
second.
second.
Motion.
Oh,
Seconded by Bill and Ralph together.
Pick one.
Does anyone have any issues? Okay, I do have a couple. On the first page, it says that I said that if adopted, the town could become a green community. I don't actually remember saying that. I may have said that it was one of the steps towards becoming a green community, and I think it's accurate the way it's stated, but I want to be sure that you all understand that I know that adopting this does not make us a green community.
Right, because this is step 5. So yeah, I think that's understood.
The other thing is that in Mark Rabinski's statement, Jeannie has captured it as his saying, he further explained this would pertain only to new construction, all new buildings, and any building over 3,000 square feet. That's, if it applies to all new buildings, then it would apply to all new buildings, including those under 3,000 square feet. And so I'm a little confused. Does anyone remember what he said?
I thought he explained that. I thought he cleared that up. Because I think that question was brought to him.
So the way it's captured is it applies to all new buildings, but only buildings over 3,000 square feet. Tom, do you have any, Tom Christensen, do you have any?
I thought we defunct that 3,000 square foot thing. It was all new construction.
Yeah,
I thought
Yes.
we did too.
because
So,
he cleared.
So I would entertain a motion to change the minutes to remove the 3,000 square foot mention.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Second, anyone?
Tom
This is-
did.
Ralph,
Sure, I'll second it.
any discussion on that?
Is that what he said? I mean, if the minutes are the minutes, is that what he said? I mean, it doesn't mean that that's how we're going to adopt the bylaw.
I thought that's what he said, but then after discussion, it was,
Clarified that that's not what he meant.
right.
So the minutes are only a synopsis. And so if we remove one line, it doesn't change what the minutes actually are, I don't believe.
That's true.
Yeah,
I
because it's
think,
still capturing the gist of the conversation, which it's supposed to do.
Right.
well, I am raising this as a motion because I don't believe the minute should ever be changed without the committee agreeing to it. And
Right.
so I think if the committee agrees to it, then it's certainly copacetic. Any further discussion? All in favor of the of removing the 3,000 square feet? Tom O'Connor,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thanks. The other thing I noticed in there, and I don't suggest we change it, is that he said, Rubinsky said that chapter 25 calls for installation of energy efficient equipment. And the only way to meet that requirement is to adopt the stretch energy code. I'm sure he said that, but I don't think it's accurate because I mean, you can build to the stretch energy code, right? Without adopting it. So those are the comments that I had, except for the last paragraph of the minutes. Where it reads, Councilor O'Connor said they should take another look at the traffic rules and regulations and perhaps have Chief Mark Williams look at it. And so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. I thought we also moved that we would defer any discussion of the traffic rules and regulations until after the codification and the general code was over and we adopted separately. Am I remembering incorrectly, or does anyone else remember that?
I remember,
no.
Tom, I remember Tom saying that he wanted the chief to take a peek at him. I don't remember where we left it.
Yeah, well,
It was, I think somebody mentioned it's only rules and regs too. So if changes needed to be made, it wasn't going to be a whole change in the bylaw thing.
I think you're right, Tom, about through the chair. I remember that conversation. We also left that, according to the minutes that I saw, Jeannie will contact the chief and ask him if he had a chance to review it. So
You're correct. And so Jeannie, apparently you did, right?
I did, and he didn't see any changes than what we made when we were proposing the codification. So again, I think I told you last time I gave him the current traffic rules and regs, the changes that we proposed, and then the end result that E-code had. And he didn't see any changes to be made in the end result that we're proposing through the general code.
Great. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended. As previously amended.
so moved.
Thank you, Tom. Second, anyone?
Second.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Thanks.
Bill, I was giving you time just in case.
Go ahead.
All in favor, Tom O'Connor,
Yes,
Bill,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
and Tom.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion, review the final language for the Stretch Energy Code bylaw. And again, I need to thank Ralph for putting that together. And we've all had a chance to look at it. I'll open the floor. Anyone want to raise their hand?
So let me find it first.
Well, it hasn't changed. We haven't changed it since you sent it to us.
We haven't, but I did have a question on it. I believe it's under number 3. I think it said under purpose. Where it's,
Reasonability.
I'm just trying to find it again. Code adoption. It basically says this shall apply to residential and commercial construction and for all other, oh, I gotta find it.
I can read it.
Yeah, if you would.
Buildings not included in this scope shall comply with 780 CMR 115 AA as indicated.
So I'm questioning if that's correct because 780 CMR, doesn't it's CMR AA as indicated, which is the stretch energy code portion of the building code. So that just didn't seem to make sense to me.
And yet you found that language in both
Exactly.
examples that were given to you.
Yeah, buildings not included in this scope shall comply with, in essence, the stretch energy code.
So it's redundant.
Well, I would think that buildings that aren't
Is-
part of the stretch energy code, that appendix should have to comply with the building code 780 CMR, but not the stretch energy portion of it.
Yeah, good point, Ralph.
So we could remove the 115 AA? Is what you're thinking?
That's what my thought is. I'm just wondering if I'm correct or if the way it's being read is different than I'm interpreting it differently.
Is it possible that the not is the problem? And what
It might
it's saying is this code applies to residential and commercial buildings included in this scope shall comply with, but that's redundant, right? Because that's
It's
what we're adopting.
redundant, but I mean, or am I just reading more than I should into it?
This is how it's stated in the sample language, right? So
Yeah,
what other buildings could we be talking about? Industrial,
Yeah, so there's certain buildings, industrial and all, that are certain sizes that don't have to meet the stretch energy code. They're not going to be a part of it. Residential construction that isn't new. So, I mean, it says this code applies to residential and commercial buildings. Well, it's the new construction of residential and commercial buildings. All others are going to just fall under 780 CMR.
Through the chair, Ralph, I don't remember where the language came from. Two different towns, was it?
So I had come up with a sample from Charlton, I believe.
Yeah.
They had adopted through E-code. And the other one, Mark Wabinski had given us.
Right. So which one, do both of them state that language?
They both state the same language. Could I be the only correct one?
Yeah.
Probably not.
so the applicability one on Charlton's says buildings not included shall comply with 780 CMR 13, 34, and 51 as applicable.
And on the one Rabinski gave, it says this code applies to residential and commercial buildings. Buildings not included in this scope shall comply with 780 CMR 115 AA as indicated.
So
so
maybe, sorry, go ahead.
rather than extend this discussion, one way around that would be to simply remove that tag statement, because there's no reason that we need in this bylaw for stretch energy code to mention what requirements are for buildings that are not included in this code, since this is a stretch energy code. So we could say this code applies to new residential commercial buildings, period. I'll throw that out for discussion, because Tom Christensen has found a discrepancy in the reference.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Charlton's was approved
Right.
by somebody.
I tend to agree with you, Pat. I think we just take it out because it has no significant bearing on the bylaw. This is just in addition to further explaining what's not included, but we don't need to put it in there.
Sorry about my phone.
Sorry about the noise in the background here.
Okay, so Tom, would you like to make a motion, or would anyone like to counter? So we can move on this.
I don't know, I guess if we have a discrepancy, should we figure it out before we vote on it, or?
There would be no discrepancy if we remove that phrase, which doesn't apply to
Right.
the stretch energy code adoption.
So Pat,
Bylaw.
just as a suggestion, what about under applicability, this code applies to residential and commercial buildings as applicable? So that way there it goes back to the state law, and whatever the state law says it applies to, it applies to.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I think that's okay, but you want to remove the word new? You don't want
So
it for-
under Charlton, the word new wasn't in there, and under Rubinski, it's not in there. So it simply
okay.
says this code applies to residential and commercial buildings, and I was gonna just say as applicable. And that way there, basically it throws you back into the state to see what it applies to.
And it only applies to new construction.
As applicable, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll stay that, yeah.
So I would make a motion that we change under the applicability to read as follows. This code applies to residential and commercial buildings as applicable.
I would second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Okay, I would observe that one of the duties of the bylaw subcommittee is to create bylaws that are helpful to the residents and the builders. And for us to install this new bylaw and not mention that it refers to new construction is not helpful to our builders or our residents, and could be misunderstood by anybody that doesn't follow up with and in fact, removing any reference to 780 CMR doesn't even give somebody a place to go look. So I have some heartburn with that change.
So Pat?
Yes, Tom.
In the purpose, the purpose of this stretch energy code is to provide a more energy efficient alternative to the base energy code applicable to the relevant sections of the building code for new buildings. So I think it's already kind of.
Thank you, Tom. You are correct. Anybody else have any comments on Ralph's language that's moved and seconded? Yes, Tom O'Connor.
We're in this discussion, Pat. I asked the question, I can't remember when, last meeting, the meeting before, or at a council meeting, and the clarification of new construction did not include, and I think that's in CMR, that did not include renovations and additions. But when we say new construction, it could be interpreted as renovations and additions. Just a thought. I'm throwing it out there for discussion.
Anyone else on that topic? Yes, Tom Christensen.
I don't know that that purpose doesn't say new construction. It specifically says new buildings.
That's the way I'm interpreting it as well.
As do I. Any further discussion on Ralph's suggested amendment to 5-053D?
Yeah.
Pick a good spot, Ralph.
Okay, I'm gonna call for the vote then. Bill,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Tom O'Connor? You're muted.
Yes.
and Tom Christensen.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So thank you for that. Tom is having trouble, obviously. He's disappeared. Tom O'Connor's disappeared from
He just
view
went
and
green.
muted as well. See if this is him. Nope. Okay, do we have any other comments on the proposed general bylaw as Ralph has stated it, or is it ready to be presented to the council? I'll entertain a motion. Yes, Tom Christensen.
Sorry, I just one last thing, and it might just be a timeline thing. The last line is enforceable by the building commissioner, which sort of doesn't exist in the existing bylaw. So if this goes in before, he's actually the building inspector in our bylaws right now, right? Does it, I mean, is it semantics?
Pat, let me jump in. Under our charter, E-code has to be accepted before the end of the year. So with that being accepted, it changes over to he's a building commissioner. This doesn't take effect until January. So at that point, it's
Perfect.
That works.
Good
Yeah.
question. Good
I
question.
suspected it was a timeline thing, so good.
Yeah.
we just have to make sure the timeline works for everyone.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's a whole separate issue.
Okay, anyone else?
Well,
Then I'll entertain a motion that the subcommittee adopt this language to recommend to the town council.
so moved.
Thank you, Bill. Second, anyone?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom Christensen. Yeah, it wouldn't be appropriate for Ralph to second it, so
No.
he was there, he was willing, but, okay, any further discussion? Okay, Tom O'Connor? Oh, you're muted again.
Yes.
And Bill,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Tom Christensen.
Yes.
Thank you, and I'm a yes as well.
I'm sorry. through the
Ralph.
chair. I got a lot going on in the background. I'm sorry. I told you,
Yeah.
at the start of the meeting, I just got a lot going on. People are just coming and going out of the house, so it's kind of disturbing and messy here.
You did disappear briefly, but we're glad you're back.
You
Thank
didn't miss anything.
I may be popping in and out again, but
Okay, the next item on the agenda, or the last item on the agenda, is to look at the process for adopting the code. I think the agenda says discuss adoption of E-code and final draft. And I assume everyone's had a chance to look at Jesse's opinion and Jesse's change in the language. And I would like, because I've had discussions with Ralph separately, I would like to ask Ralph to weigh in on this. Well, no, before I do that, I want to remind us to set the stage. We have been asking town departments for 3 years now, starting under Tom Florence and Denise, and maybe even before that, to give us all the changes that they wanted to see in their bylaws. And so it's very important that we're able to deliver that. Unfortunately, we have a mixture of codification things that are just nuisance items and capitalizations, and we have some codification things that are just adding language that was missing before, even though it's non-substantive and just descriptive. And then we have a few substantive items. And so we're discussing the potential of having to separate those two, and how we might separate those two, and how we might present them. Because we owe it to the departments to make sure that all those things are included. but we don't want to get in trouble with the way it is presented to the townspeople or any open meeting law. So I've had discussions with Ralph about this, and I've separately discussed with Mike. And Mike is looking to our committee for discussion on this, but Ralph, I believe, has the answer. So I want to turn it over to you, Ralph.
Great. So like Pat was saying, we were concerned we may have to do multiple bylaw changes. But what we ended up doing is we changed the charter, and specifically the language in the charter allows us to do one vote on all of the codification. So the charter specifically states, notwithstanding the codification of the town bylaws and related legislation commenced by the town council before December 31st, 2021, along with any qualifying amendments to the bylaws proposed as part of this process, may be voted on as a single subject being proposed. So that means all the amendments that we're proposing, all the changes, all the addition of the departments and all can be voted on as a whole at once, as long as they were qualifying and were part of the process right along. So like we can't take today and decide to change another bylaw and just slip it into place. But if we've been looking at all of this right along, we can vote on this as one time as a whole. Now, there will be something that's a little bit different, and Jesse points it out. Under our zoning bylaws, the state requires that the planning board hold a public hearing on any changes to zoning bylaws. So they're going to have to hold a public hearing. They'll make a recommendation to the council. And then the council can vote on the E-code as a whole, hopefully with their recommendation that they were good with any and all changes. I think the whole thing came down to that charter vote and the language that we instituted into the charter to allow us to do all of this.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do 17 separate public hearings.
Hi, Ralph.
Does everyone understand that? Because I was not aware personally that that language would allow this, but I do see it. I do understand it. And I just want to open up the session to anyone who doesn't see it that way or wants clarification from Ralph. Yes, Tom O'Connor.
No, I agree with what Ralph is saying. We already discussed this. We've beaten this for the last year. And it was in the changes that were voted on and approved by the town after review and approval by the Attorney General. So I think we're good to go.
Well, those of us that sat on both this committee and the charter review kind of lived this document for quite a while, and we did kick around how it was going to be voted on, and ultimately came up with a language that was subsequently approved back in June by the townspeople. So I think we're good to go. I think it's very clear what this vote will be and what it will do. But it was also a one-time vote. It's nothing that can happen again. And the Charter Commission was very specific that this was a one-time deal, and that any other changes, subsequent changes down the road, had to follow the normal procedure of public hearings, et cetera.
Right, that was the only intent of putting that in the charter. And then we thought, well, in 10 years, when it's done again, you can take it out.
Right.
But it's worth putting it in there just for this purpose, so.
Correct.
Tom Christensen,
Agree.
anything? Okay. Ralph, I do have a question. My question is related to the first line of that paragraph that's found in the new charter. It says, notwithstanding the above, the codification and related legislation commenced by the town council before December 31st, 2021. It would appear to me that we are not required by this paragraph anyway, maybe by another paragraph, we're not required to actually adopt this. That's not a deadline for the adoption. it's actually would allow us to make additional changes between now and December 31st, 2021, even though, Ralph, you have said we can't make any changes right now. It's only what we talked about originally.
I
think
think
the
that's because along with qualifying amendments,
Yeah,
and again, can we make adjustments as we go? Yes, as long as they're part of the process that's been in it. I'm saying we can't just look to the bylaws and pick something out and go, hey, the sign bylaw I don't like, so let's change it now and we'll just slip it in as part of this.
And that's what the
I
Charter
don't think we're
Commission.
gonna do anyway, so.
but the language, that's the only date I find, and that date seems to apply to any related legislation commenced by the town council before December 31st. So it not only would allow us to make changes, I think by this language before December 31st, but it also doesn't require us to adopt,
So,
even though I want to adopt it this fall.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a deadline for adoption. I think we could actually adopt it after December 31st, as long as we didn't make any changes there.
when I was on the planning board, the commencing of the bylaw was the first publication. And I think that's the date that you always go by. So we have to do 2 readings and all. So I think basically what it's saying is you have to at least have the first publication of what you're gonna do in place by December 31st, 2021. That's the way I was interpreting it when we put that date in. And that way there, the process has begun for the legislative changes. And again,
Yes, I think we're
I'd
saying,
rather it done sooner rather than later, so.
I think we're saying the same thing, though. I
Yeah.
think we all want to do that, but
Yeah.
I'm questioning your statement that we couldn't make any changes between now and, say, September, or October.
We could make changes as long as they fall under qualifying amendments,
Right.
whatever that means. We'll have to ask Attorney Levine what exactly that means.
And you would agree, and I'll ask Bill the same thing, you would agree that if worse comes to worse, the deadline for December 31st is only the deadline for making any qualifying changes or acknowledging any qualifying changes, but that this could be adopted in January or February, God forbid it gets delayed.
I agree with the way Ralph's interpretation is, that the process has to begin, at least that first part, by December 31st.
Okay, I'll ask the clarification then. What does it mean? Because we already have begun the process. We've had many, many meetings. The town council has
approval
voted on
process.
the amendments.
The approval process, the public hearings.
Okay. Tom Christensen, you had a question?
No, I think you guys are in agreement and saying the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So for instance, so the stretch energy code, if this gets, if this gets to be approved by 12/31, I'm not so sure we're going to have it in the final code because of the timing. They were publishing the code for the public and all that stuff. So that's going to be tricky, I think. You know what I mean? I'd have to talk to general code about that, but we're going to have to do, readings of this and public hearings of the stretch code. Say it's not adopted, approved by the council until like maybe October. But in the meantime, we've already advertised for the adoption of the E code. It's gonna
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
pass. So we might have that come. I think that's the only bylaw we have on the table that could come up between now and then. Do you guys know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the reason
Yes.
we're voting right now that that's under the format of the existing bylaws.
Yeah.
Because
Correct,
we know
Ralph.
with the codification process, it's gonna change and they're gonna have to fit
Right.
it in.
We'll have to catch up somehow.
And if they
Yeah,
fit
so-
it in at the first 6 months of the year, well, it is what it is.
And so
Yeah,
no
I
more
just-
bylaws till after the first year.
It just won't be in the first edition of the
That's right.
code immediately.
Right.
Okay, Yeah.
But since the code will be online, it'll be added whenever it can be added.
yes.
And there's a record in town of this bylaw having been approved.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a process now.
Yeah. We're getting to the end. It's coming close.
And
I would say that every time we get there, we get
Real
kicked back.
messy here. It's very loud, so I'm having difficulty following what's going on. I'm really gonna have to bow out unless we're gonna take a vote very soon.
I don't see the need for us to take a vote. Is there any need to take a vote at this point, Ralph? Ralph?
It's already in the council's hands, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, so it's up to the council. Well, like I talked to Jeannie, she's gonna have to send the zoning portion to Bethany. They're gonna have to hold a public hearing on that. And hopefully by October, we'll be ready to put it on our agenda, or November for the public hearings and all.
So as chair, then I'm going to write up a statement to be made at the next town council meeting as to what the next steps are. And I'll work with Jeannie on that and share it with all of you so that the town council knows knows what we're relying on in language and where the language is, and what the time frame is for the different pieces that need to be done, particularly the zoning hearings. And I will share that with everyone. You can have a chance to look at it, and we could probably discuss it at our next meeting.
Do you want to discuss that now?
I'd have to, I haven't created it.
Okay. I just wanted to add that as far as publishing a synopsis of the E-code
Yep.
in the local publication, I talked with Jesse about this a little bit, and we allowed that in the charter, the synopsis, because of the expense of publishing all the text. But I'm suggesting that we publish the whole adoption of the code bylaw. And I know it's lengthy and it's going to cost about $1,200, but just like the charter mailing, I think it's money well spent. A synopsis, we might miss something that should have been in there. And I just think we should do that. So, and I've got the money in my budget. We always pad the legal notice budget because we never know how many bylaws we're going to be using and throughout the year. So I would suggest that we just, for publication reasons, just put the whole thing in there.
And you are referring to Schedule A, the 40
I'm not referring to Schedule A. So the adoption refers to Schedule A, but I would not include that. That'd just be way too much money.
So what you're referring to is something that we would build together, or you would draft, or something that would only focus on
Well,
summarize.
it would be the adoption itself, the bylaw itself that Jesse revised. All that text.
So this text, this 3-page document.
Yes.
So
That makes sense. This time around, that makes sense because the scope of this project, people have to understand what we did here.
Right. And then I can have like a special place in the website where it has the adoption, it has Schedule A, it has PDF of the paginated version. I'll have all those hard copies in here if anybody wants to come and review them that way, the old fashioned way. So.
Makes sense.
What's missing is a synopsis.
But we don't need the synopsis if the whole thing is there.
Right.
Yeah, who's gonna read 44 pages? Or
Well,
most
No,
of-
no, no, Pat. So the whole thing that Jeannie's talking about is this 3-page document,
I
which-
understand.
proposed adoption bylaw, the proposed code adoption bylaw. So this is the whole bylaw, and she wants to publish this. And
Right.
I would agree 100% on that.
I would agree 100% as well. I
And then
think
the
that,
Schedule
As
A that has
44
the-
pages, that's going to stay in Jeannie's office so that the 2 people in town that want to read it can.
Or online, it'll be online too, so. And I could probably do even a robocall to refer people to this and refer them to the website, you know, just to cover, because that robocall also goes in email format that I can attach links to.
So we are not concerned as a committee in publishing a synopsis as we did for the charter review, publishing a synopsis of the changes that we're making in the bylaws. We're just publishing a legalese without any synopsis of the changes. And they have to come to the town bylaw to find them. And when they do, they'll find the 44 pages.
Right.
How do we feel about that?
What are you suggesting? Getting it down to 20 or so?
No, yeah, I'm suggesting it could be much less than that, actually. I'm suggesting that we could say capitalization, punctuation, formatting, it would be one line, or, you know, one short paragraph, and then fines would be fines increased. That would be one, maybe 3 or 4 fines. And in the same way that we did for charter, we didn't just simply say, read the red line.
Okay. And you pretty much have been doing that the entire time, right?
I have been doing that the entire time. It's been exposed to the public through our public meetings with the town council, yes.
Right. So, I mean, I don't want to vote on giving you more work as the chair.
So
Jeannie?
in section 1-15A, it says certain grammatical changes and other minor non-substantive changes were made in one or more of said bylaws. It is the intention of the town council that all changes be adopted. And then B, it says, in addition, the amendments and or additions as set forth in Schedule A. So that refers to Schedule A. So in that section, it does say grammar changes not substantive, and then it refers to the Schedule A.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what you're saying is we need to put the stuff in Schedule A somewhere in the publication.
I think we need to summarize. I'm proposing that for the benefit of the townspeople and for really, what's the word we're looking for? Oh, transparency, that we publish a summary of 2 or 3 pages of the significant changes rather than the 44, rather than just force them. I do not want to print the 44 pages.
So,
Sorry, go ahead, Ralph.
so Jeannie, I'm just curious, if we print up these 3 pages as a bylaw, is there any way to add where it says as set forth in Schedule A and then just make parentheses, which is available on the town's website? Just so that they'll know there's a Schedule A and they'll know where to find it,
Right,
because we're not going to print 44 pages.
right.
Nope.
And I also do like the fact that through the rave phone calls, I can do the email and they can all just click on it. And that goes to like 12,000 people or something. A lot of people sign up for that.
But the email is only the 3 pages.
No, it would have the link, it would have the link to the paginated version. It would have the link to Schedule A. I'd put as much as I could in there.
Okay.
So but you were just proposing to simplify that 44 pages, Pat.
Very much so, Tom.
Okay.
For
I
the
mean-
benefit of transparency and for the benefit of the general public.
So
who isn't paying.
we'd have whatever Schedule A, and then we'd have, you know, Pat's Cliff's Notes or something of Schedule A.
Summarization of Schedule A.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think this day and age, having a 3-page version instead of a 44-page version would probably get looked at a lot more. So I guess I'll agree with you if that's something that we want to get on the site as well.
How about you, Ralph?
So I have no problems, Pat, with you doing a synopsis. So that if they go onto the website, that'll be the main changes. That's what they read to begin with. And then they can go further if they want to see them individually with the 44 pages. I just don't think printing it and sending it out or anything it's not worthwhile. I honestly, I don't think anyone's even going to pay attention to most of this. There's
So-
only a handful of us in town that really dig deep, and we're all on committees.
Yeah.
Ralph, Bill, your feeling about that, is it overkill? Is it just extra work, as Tom pointed out?
I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with what everybody's saying. Less is more. Keep it short and sweet. Point them in the right direction. To Ralph's point, there's only 4 or 5 people that are going to read it, and we're sitting here. So,
Yes, Jeannie.
So I just want clarification. I thought we were talking about the publication and the reminder as far as text goes, and our conversation kind of morphed into the website and everything else. So first of all, in the publication for the reminder, I was proposing just the 3-page code with what Ralph is saying after Schedule A, refer to town website or something like
Right.
that.
yes.
So you're talking about summarizing Schedule A, Pat, and having that available on the website and in hard copy in the office. Is that correct?
I would propose that also go in the reminder. That's so that you're publishing 6 pages, say 5 pages or 6 pages rather than 3. All the references are still there, but I'm one person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of 5.
I don't think it's necessary, personally. That's my opinion.
I don't either.
Sorry. I think if you're going to do it, pointing them to the website and putting it there is good enough.
I agree with that.
So do I. I understand what you're saying, Pat, and usually I would agree with you, except for the fact that we've been on this process for 3 years and we have seen no one in town interested whatsoever. I mean, to the point where no one's even asking, well, what bylaws are you changing? Nothing, 0. And usually I get peppered with questions and there's nothing.
Okay, we'll see.
But I
what
will
the-
guarantee if we put in there that we were going to raise the town council salary,
Oh, yeah.
get thousands of phone calls.
no, not the- just this subcommittee,
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
because this subcommittee deserves all we've been through.
Trust me, I've been getting enough phone calls and emails for everybody for the last 2.5 weeks. So
What about?
we're good. The weather, the rain,
Anyone else, anyone else have any comments on this? As it stands, I will do a summary of the next steps for the town council presentation, and I'll share it with you obviously beforehand. And, but at this point, we don't have any outstanding items that I'm aware of. Anyone?
Nope. I think we're
Okay.
good.
Do we want to schedule a next meeting, or is that necessary at this point? I don't see you.
I think we should just wait and see if Jeannie reaches out to us, and if we need to meet, we meet. If not, I wouldn't schedule anything. Because I think, to your
Yeah.
point, Pat, you're gonna explain the process to the council where we're at.
Yep.
And then we get our marching orders from them. If there's something they have heartburn over, then it comes back to us.
Jeannie, you were going to say something?
Yeah. I was just looking at an email because I was going back and forth with Jesse on minor things, just so it's, straight in my head. And he did say that it makes sense to publish just the adoption of the code, and didn't think it was necessary for the contents to be published in the reminder. So we're good with that. And
Yeah,
then,
but he's referring to the 40 pages.
Right.
yeah,
We
so
all-
the other thing was, for the public hearing for this, I asked if we could waive the reading of Schedule A, and he advises against that. So he feels that we should read that Schedule A at the hearing. And it is the substance is what the town council is voting on. So I'll probably have a counselor read each page or something like that.
Well, that's
It's
his,
painful, but
that's his advice.
yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's
have-
his advice. It doesn't mean we have to follow it.
But in the era of transparency, I think we should do something pretty darn close to that.
Unless we
Well-
read the summary.
Again,
Right.
that would argue for the summary.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would come in handy then.
Yeah.
That'd be a compromise. Yeah. so.
Unless we have Connor read the whole thing just because he's new.
That's hazing, Pat. Be careful.
Thank you, Tom. I'm
So
correct.
why don't you float that rumor out there?
So
So-
going to, regarding the public hearings, how should that be divided up, you think?
What do you mean?
Well, we want to do it all at once? All in one meeting?
Yes.
I
Okay,
think so.
so we've got the general bylaws, zoning bylaws, and traffic rules and regs.
No, just the zoning bylaws have to have a meeting.
Okay,
Have to have and it's not us that holds it, it's the planning
Planning
board, right?
oh, and that's another, but we'll have to have a public hearing on that. Ultimately, the council. For the
So,
zoning bylaws.
so we hold a public hearing on the adoption of the code, which includes the zoning bylaws.
Okay,
The
That's
zoning
the way I'm
bylaws,
interpreting
it
this.
has to be
One public
approved by
hearing.
a 2/3 majority.
Right. You hand the planning board the zoning stuff. They hold their public hearing. They recommend to the council. The council has their public hearing with that recommendation from the planning board, and everybody moves on.
so that public hearing will be within the E-code public hearing,
Right.
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, good, great. I just wanted to make,
Everybody's gonna be reading that night. Everybody, even the audience.
yeah. Okay, good, great, we're getting there.
Then I will entertain a motion
Motion to adjourn.
to adjourn. Ralph, yes? Second, second by Bill. Any discussion? Bill,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. That's a 4 to zip vote because I don't believe that Tom O'Connor is still with us.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Here.
Okay.